Okay, she be going every single night. Day and night on my mind, pushing a cute vibe.
How's it going, everybody? This is Tyler Drabo. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, it's time for another gaming video. However, this one is going to be a little different. It's not a haul on games video, despite what you see here. Instead, it's going to be a top 5 video, and for this one, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 favorite Call of Duty games. Now, for those that know me know that Call of Duty is my all-time favorite video game franchise. I have almost every single game in my video game collection from the Call of Duty franchise. That's for the consoles only, and I love every single one of them. I'm especially excited for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 to come out this year. So, to celebrate it, I'm going to share with you the 5 personal favorites that I have in my collection. Frankly, I'm a fan of every single one of these games, and even though some of them may be a lot harder, it definitely is enjoyable to sit down and play a first-person shooter like Call of Duty. So, for this one, I'm going to be basing on, the creativity, along with, the execution, and also just the excitement level of the games. So, every one of these 3 is factored in with all my decisions, and so obviously this is going to be a very exciting and also maybe a rather unique and controversial top 5 for some of those that are huge Call of Duty fans. So let's just go ahead and share with you some of my favorites. Alright, so my number 5 favorite Call of Duty game of all time, and this one is a rather controversial pick. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a problem with this pick, but I certainly find it to be a good one. It is called Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. This was a game that was released back in 2016, and unlike most other Call of Duty games, this one takes place up in space. You get to ride with the Space Force, serve with, fellow soldiers that serve in space and try to stop, what could be a complete mass destruction of Mother Earth. And so you're basically fighting off everybody in a completely different universe, and really you have all of these unique weapons on your stable that you can use. Obviously you have your airplanes, but also you have your spaceships as well, with a whole lot of mechanized weapons that go along with it as well, and just a lot of creativity that comes out when it comes to this game. Now, there were a couple other games that were almost similar to this that came out just before, with Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3 as well. However, this one I think was the one that was most perfected, because it really brought the intensity level and the drama to a whole nother level. And while it may not be one of the most popular games in Call of Duty, I especially love it because of the creativity that came out of this one. It's going into a direction that is not usually known from Call of Duty. It's a rather fun game, and I really do enjoy playing it, and one of the few times where you actually get to play a first-person shooter while you're up in outer space as well, trying to save your planet Earth, obviously, and it's definitely really unique as well. And so I'm really happy that I have this game, and it's definitely up there as one of my favorites. I know a lot of you are going to have mixed opinions about this, especially when it comes to multiplayer, which I've heard was quite bad, but the single player campaign, that's very good, and so that's exactly why it is number 5 on my top 5. My number 4 favorite Call of Duty game, and this one comes all the way back in 2008, is Call of Duty World at War. Now, this game was developed by Treyarch and was really the last known World War II game that was made in the Call of Duty franchise until 2017. But boy, it was a really good one. You get to play as part of the U.S. squad in the Battle of the Pacific, where you basically go to certain places like, Shuri Castle at the very end, along with Okinawa as well. So there's a lot of action that goes on in the Pacific, and you also play as a Russian soldier as well, who fights through, the siege of Stalingrad, as well as your pursuit all the way to Berlin, Germany, where you fight off all the Germans and ultimately raise the flag at the very end of the game. It's a very compelling game, and for this being the last World War II game to come out before Call of Duty World War II in 2017, it was very, very good. There was a lot of excitement that came out of this game. There was a lot of action. The graphics were also pretty realistic too. It felt like that you were literally right in the middle of the game for its time. And just the dialogue and the characters as well, all the personalities that you get in me as well. It's definitely what makes this game really good. Getting to hear the different perspectives, and also just seeing everything right from your very eyes. It just brings that extra emotion that you get in the game when you're nearly die from all the crazy things that happen in this game, especially at the very end when your Russian character ends up getting shot while you're trying to raise the Russian flag, and ultimately, he was able to overcome that and accomplish the mission and end the war in Europe. But it's a really compelling game. I definitely felt like that it was a really good one for its time, and as I said, I love World War II games. They're personally among some of my favorite games that I get to play, and this was one that I think Activision and Treyarch did very well at. So this is a very good one. although I wish it could have been higher, I feel like number 4 was definitely a good place for this countdown. However, it deserves a rightful place in my top 5. Number 3 on my countdown, and this is a game that I felt like could have been at number 2. However, there was one other game that I feel like that really surpassed that, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a little bit. But this was still a really good one. This was one of the games that was really responsible for bringing Call of Duty into the limelight, and most importantly, it was the one that brought to life the famous Black Ops franchise, probably the best sub-series in all of Call of Duty. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Call of Duty Black Ops. This was released back in 2010, also by Treyarch, and this was a very, very good one. It was probably one of the greatest COD games of all time, and really, it just brought a new level into Call of Duty, you know. You're basically fighting in the 1960s while it was in the middle of the Cold War, and it's such a really interesting story. You first start out in Cuba, where you actually get kidnapped and captured, and you end up in Vorkuta for a couple of years by a Russian enemy that's trying to control you, and also to lead you onto the assassination attempt of your own country's president. However, you overcome that, and then you spend the next several years trying to hunt him down, and ultimately you accomplish that at the very end of the game. It takes you to places like Vietnam, along with Russia as well. There's just so much that's going on in this game. I mean, I can tell you some of the plot twists that you see in this game, particularly when you actually end up seeing hallucinations and visions of a character that you were with in Vorkuta. It really brings a lot of that energy into this game, because, you know, it feels like that although the character was actually already dead before all the action that takes place in Vietnam in 1968, it really does bring a whole lot of compelling narrative into the game, because it really feels like that you still have a buddy that's with you, especially with all the other characters that are there around you. I mean, trying to find out the codes to a secret station that you don't know exactly where it is, especially when it's underwater, it was definitely very hard, but, you know, that was what really makes this game so good, the suspense. And also, you know, the graphics are good. You got a good amount of weapons that are related to that era during the Sable, and for a Call of Duty game to actually take place, you know, at least partially during Vietnam, I believe this is the only one in the Call of Duty franchise in which really you get to play in Vietnam for a certain period of time. I really did enjoy that. I believe there was a COD game during the time that would have taken place in Vietnam entirely that was in development. However, that was scrapped because of, you know, all the issues that were taking place with the development of Modern Warfare 3. I would definitely love to see that game. You know, that would definitely be very exciting to get to play a game in Vietnam. So hopefully that pans out. But either way though, this is still a really nice game, and it definitely deserves its place on my list. Number 2 on my countdown is personally one of my all-time favorite PlayStation 2 games, and it's also a rather interesting pick as well, so I'll leave it to you to decide if you really think this should be in my top 5, but I personally love this game. It is called Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1. Now, for those that are wondering, no, this was not the actual Call of Duty 2 that was released in 2005. This is actually a spin-off game that was released around the same time that Call of Duty 2 came out. And basically what was happening at the time was that Call of Duty 2, it was being the first COD game to be released on the consoles. However, that one was only released on the Xbox 360. So Activision and Treyarch decided that they wanted to do a spin-off version of Call of Duty 2, so that way they can put it on the PlayStation 2 and give it, you know, its take on the second game of the Call of Duty franchise. And so they decided to make this one Big Red 1. And for this one, you play as entirely a U.S. Army soldier in the Big Red 1, in which you go to places like North Africa, along with Italy, and also in the front lines of France, in which you make your pursuit over into Germany and win the war in Europe. And you play as part of the Big Red 1, which was at the time the oldest division in the United States Army. And really all the characters that you get to meet, it was probably one of the funniest games in the Call of Duty franchise, because, you know, you get to meet some of these characters like Kelly, Bloomfield, Dennery, and, you know, all those guys. Some of them were rather hilarious to listen to, but man, the action that takes place, you know, there is a lot of suspense with that as well, and it definitely makes this a really good game. Not only that, this is also the very first game that I ever got that was from Call of Duty. This was a game that introduced me to this franchise when I first got this back in 2006, and I loved it so much that whenever I had issues with this game, I had to ask my dad and mom if I can get another version of this, and every time I just keep coming back to this because I just love this game. It's probably one of my favorite PlayStation 2 games of all time, but it is also a very good game for its time, even though it was a spin-off. I mean, trust me, there were some issues that you can possibly think about. You know, the graphics for this game probably could have been a little better, but still, you know, all the weapons that you get to have along your stable, along with all the characters that you get to fight, and along with the destinations that you get to go to, you know, because they were all very specific and very important battles that take place, especially the invasion over in the D-Day, which Normandy Beach, obviously. That's a very historic mission there, and I'm glad that that got to be a part of the game, because there's a lot that you can say about Big Red 1, which makes it, in my opinion, a surprisingly good game. So yeah, I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not you think this belongs in my countdown, but I love this game. This was a game that first brought me into the franchise, and I've really just had this close to my heart ever since. This is a great game, and I'm so happy that I get to have it all these years later. It is number 2 in my countdown for a reason. I love this game. So yeah, I really loved that game. It was a lot of fun, and it was what brought me into the Call of Duty franchise. However, there is still one game, in my opinion, that still tops it out as perhaps my all-time favorite Call of Duty game. You know what it is. It's perhaps the greatest Call of Duty game of all time, the most critically acclaimed one, and this was the one that really brought the franchise onto the map. It is Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Yes, this was around the time in which most first-person shooters were starting to get out of the World War II scene and go right into the Modern Warfare arc, and this was the game that revolutionized the whole entire thing. This was released back in 2007 by Infinity Ward, and this was such a great game, and really the one that I think really brought the Call of Duty franchise onto the map. I mean, if Call of Duty 3 and Call of Duty 2 didn't do that beforehand, this one certainly did. You get to play as a British soldier in the SAS, in which you're trying to stop, a Russian ultra-nationalist that's trying to destroy most of America with a nuclear weapon and all that stuff. And you also play in the Middle East as well, where you play as a US soldier that's trying to stop a Mideastern terrorist that actually is working with that Russian ultra-nationalist. And so there are so many big scenes that takes place throughout the entire course of this game. The big one, and probably the most iconic scene in Call of Duty history, is that nuclear explosion that does take place in the Middle East that kills every single US soldier there is in that area. I can tell you, when I first played this game, my jaw dropped when I saw that, because I did not think that that game would end very early as a result of that. But hey, there was revenge that took place at the very end of the game. You also get to go in the past as well when you play as the leader Captain Price back in 1996, and of course all the action that takes place when both US and British soldiers come together to defeat the Russian ultranationalists and ultimately save most of America and the world from perhaps a terrible nuclear warfare. It is such an incredible game. I mean, this is basically all you would want from a Call of Duty game at the time. I mean, basically, it had everything you want, all the weapons, all the graphics, all the characters that you get play alongside, the storyline as well. The multiplayer mode was also very good. Everything that you could have wanted in a Call of Duty game, this was basically it right here. And since then, I don't think there has been really a single Call of Duty game that has been able to match this. I mean, try going back to 2007 and being told that this would ultimately be the peak of the Call of Duty franchise. I mean, it would be very hard to accept, but you know what though, this was still such a great game that brought the franchise into the limelight, and to this day it still holds a lot of memories. There's also a remastered version of Modern Warfare that was released as a joint game alongside Infinite Warfare in 2016 before it ultimately became its own standalone release, and that was really good as well, though probably not as exciting as the original version. Either way though, it's the greatest Call of Duty game of all time for a reason, and also personally my favorite PlayStation 3 game as well. All the excitement that takes place in this game, and forever the game that really brought the Call of Duty franchise into the limelight and revolutionized the modern warfare scene in video gaming. It is such an incredible game. I love it. It is so exciting. Nothing is going to stop Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. It is my all-time favorite Call of Duty video game for a reason. I love this one. Wow, 5 great games from the Call of Duty franchise that I have in my collection. These were my 5 personal favorites. However, I still have a bunch of other Call of Duty games that I personally enjoyed as well, and I'll leave that in my honorable mentions in the description below. Feel free to check that out, but I know you have your mixed opinions on this as well. So if you personally have a favorite Call of Duty game that was not in its top 5, what was it? I definitely like to hear from those that are huge fans of the Call of Duty franchise like I am, and more importantly, are you excited about the release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 this fall? I'm definitely going to be getting it when it comes out, so feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be more interested in hearing your opinions about it. Anyways, that's going to do it for another video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's vlogs, projects, challenges, or gaming content, you name it. Leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for another video. Hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see all of you again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.